Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Kalick here, and welcome back to the In a Crowded Room podcast, where on this episode, we're going to be talking about the controversial Jeffrey Epstein cell footage, in which I'm going to point out to you guys an aspect of it that everybody has seemingly overlooked. And that aspect demonstrates that there's much more than 1 minute of footage missing. And I'm really kind of surprised that people haven't pointed out what I'm going to demonstrate because they've done some amazing work on this. And before we get into all that, big shout out to CoffeeZilla and the work he's doing. I think he did an incredible job. And if you guys know Coffee or anybody out there knows him directly, if you could forward this to him, I would appreciate it. I think he would find it very, very interesting. Okay, having said that, it's been a minute since I have been back. I don't really want to get into the details as to what happened right now because I'm just tired of paying it, a focus or attention in my life. But I just had a medical issue that had to be taken care of. And what's important is that I'm doing great and I got it worked out. And it was just something that got a little scary for a couple months, but it's all good, and I feel really good, so no worries. I want to thank all of you guys for wishing me a happy birthday. My birthday came and went on June 18th, and I did see all the messages, so much love to all of you. No worries, I'm all good, everybody. I'm back at it, so get ready to see and hear from me a lot more. But let's get into it, guys. Let's get into this footage. Now, I realize there's going to be some people that listen to this specific podcast that don't know who I am because we're venturing into political territory. If you guys know, I usually don't do anything political, not because I don't have political views or anything like that, but just simply because there's so many, YouTube channels that offer political commentary. And if I can't add anything of value, then I usually kind of, stay away from those conversations. But, in being completely transparent, I did not vote for Donald Trump, but I also did not vote for Joe Biden or Kamala either. I am an independent. I'm what you would call, I guess, a true centrist. And the reason I'm commenting on this and the reason I decided to, share with you guys the details about this that I noticed is because I would hope that when it comes to harming children, that is something everybody is against. And there are a lot of victims in this case that certainly have not received justice. And I don't know that this will help to do that. But when something veers into my lane and I feel as though I can offer something, I want to do that. I want to be part of the solution and not, part of the problem. So what do I mean by my lane? For those of you that don't know me, I am a professional filmmaker and a professional editor, and I work a lot with equipment and have for 30 years, including CCTV equipment, which I worked with a lot as a director and a cast member of Paranormal State, and through my own investigations, and just investigating the bizarre, the mysterious, and the unexplained. You often work with CCTV cameras, which is what I'm going to be commenting on. So there's a few things about this Jeffrey Epstein footage that I'm going to walk you guys through, and I'll just assume that nobody knows anything and you've never seen it before. If you don't know what occurred, Pam Bondi, the FBI, they came out with this footage, and they said it's raw footage of Jeffrey Epstein's cell, and it proves that he couldn't have been murdered and that there's no client list now, nothing to see, case is over. Well, the footage itself did just the opposite because there are a lot of weird things about it. As I go through this, again, I'm going to be referencing some of the work that CoffeeZilla has already done. He's really trying to make a difference, and I think he did a great job breaking all this down. I'm also going to be referencing an article that came out on Wired. that looked into the footage and determined that it had, in fact, been altered. And I can confirm that after looking at the metadata as well. But let's start with the first thing that we see. If you look on the screen, this is the footage that they released. The first thing that's important to note is that these cells that you see here on the right, these doors that are right here, this is not Jeffrey Epstein's cell. Okay, this is a camera that's looking out over the commons area. To get to Jeffrey Epstein's cell, it's all the way across the room. You'll see this little stairway right here. That is a stairway that leads to Jeffrey Epstein's cell, which is off camera. You cannot see it. You can only see the corner, the tiny little corner of the steps leading to where his cell was.
People understandably thought this was footage of his cell. Here's what this looks like. It's CCTV footage, but this is not actually Epstein's cell, nor is this door. This is footage of a common area. Epstein's door is way back over here in the corner. You can't see it from this footage angle.
Now, the government released like 12 or 13 hours, I think, of total footage. What's funny about that is that like 99% of it doesn't even matter because, you can't see anything. So what's important to note, across the way where those little stairs are, at 10:40, you will see the guard get up and obviously let somebody in. And how do we know that? We know that because if you look at these stairs right here, as laid out here by CoffeeZilla, you will see somebody in orange walk up those steps at 10:40.
There was someone, what looks to be an inmate, out of his cell at 10:40 p.m. And the question is, who is that person? You can see this at 10:38 p.m. Remember, everyone's supposed to have been in their jail cell for 2.5 hours at this point. No prisoners. You can see a guard goes over to somewhere out of sight. We can't see it. None of the cameras were recording except for this one. And then moments later, we see a little bit of orange near the staircase. Now I'm going to have to zoom into this. It's extremely hard to see, but you can see a little pixel of orange makes its way up the staircase.
Now, initially, they said that in the OIG report by the government in 2023, they said that Epstein was locked in his cell at 8 o'clock. They later stated that at 10:40, someone with a bunch of orange linens went up the stairs to deliver them to the people in their cells. It should also be pointed out that the government in the OIG report later changed their story and said that that was Jeffrey Epstein that was let up there and that he had been let out to place a phone call to someone in Belarus. He initially said it was his mother. They determined that it was somebody else that he had a personal relationship with. And on that phone call, he was recording telling the person that he wouldn't be able to call them for another month, but he was going to. So he didn't exactly say goodbye, have a good life. He didn't talk like he was going to kill himself. He told this person that he would talk to them in another month. If you believe that this was Jeffrey Epstein in this orange jumpsuit that went back up those stairs at 10:40. Now I'm going to tell you later why I don't believe this was Jeffrey Epstein, and I actually do believe this was in fact another inmate bringing up linens to, quote, deliver them to the inmates. So what piece of evidence am I talking about that everyone is overlooking? Well, it comes right at 11:58:58, in which everyone is saying there's a minute of footage that's missing. There's a minute of footage that's missing. And when you first watch it, yes, it goes 11:58, and at 58 seconds, you see it jump to 12 midnight, but the entire aspect ratio of the footage changes. And that is far more important than the time.
You're going to want to look at this time, and you'll see in about 3 seconds it will jump and the framing will change. So there you can see there was a cut or some kind of edited footage. And it obviously begs the question, why is there a minute missing from the FBI's like prove it tape?
The 11:58:58 demonstrates that it's not 1 minute that's gone. If you line it up to 12, it's a minute and 2 seconds that's gone. Those 2 seconds are very important. I'm going to tell you why in a second. First off, Pam Bondi said that's because the cameras reset every night at that time, and it goes from 11:58:58 back to midnight. And she also said, we'll release that on other cameras to show that in the future.
The minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night.
Well, thus far, they have not released any footage demonstrating that every night there's a minute and 2 seconds of footage that goes unfilmed. And in my honest opinion, they are not going to release that. Why? First off, I have never worked with or heard of an analog CCTV system just dropping a minute and 2 seconds every night. I mean, who would sell a CCTV system, especially for a jail that has gaps in the recording? And just to be clear, what she's saying is that every night there is a mode or software reset, meaning that the system keeps operating, but it just resets every night for a minute and 2 seconds and doesn't record anything, but keeps operating. But the reason we know that's not true is that if the system was just a reset, it would maintain its aspect ratio. But as we see, it doesn't. So why does the aspect ratio change? That's the secret in this whole thing. Because it's not a system reboot. It's a full power shutdown. They simply shut off the DVR system. And when they turn it back on, you get a different resolution. When you get these CCTV cameras, you could choose the resolution that you want. You can choose whether you want to record lower resolution and a longer period of time, or a higher resolution and a shorter period of time. But when you shut it off and turn it back on, it reverts back to factory settings. I've used these systems everywhere. The ones they use were from the late 90s in this prison, and they're analog cameras, okay? There's no timer there that takes a minute and 2 seconds to restart. When you turn the power off, they go down. When you turn them back on, they start at the factory setting that they're on, and it's 12:00. In fact, if you go to Google Gemini and you say, why would a CCTV camera record 2 separate video clips at different aspect ratios? It says, a crucial factor in aspect ratio changes after a power cycle is the system's default settings. Upon restarting, the recording device or processor might revert to factory settings or a predefined default, which could be different from the previous recording configuration. And trust me, I'm reading that for your benefit, not mine. I have used these analog CCTV multicam systems on hundreds of occasions. And every single time you unplug them and plug them back in, it reverts to the default. It's literally just like if you ever had an old VHS recorder, or like I said, or an old alarm clock. When you unplug it and plug it back in, it starts the factory settings. So, the reason the aspect ratio changes is because of that. 11:58:58 is not some reset time. It's simply when they shut the DVR off. So what does that mean? What does that mean? That means that there's not a minute missing. There's not a minute and 2 seconds missing. It could have been an hour later, right? It could have been whatever time. There's as much time needed to do whatever they were doing before they power it back on, and it starts at the factory settings at 12:00 midnight. So why didn't they fix this before they rendered this out? As Wired reports, the footage was edited. They're absolutely right. If you look at the metadata, you can see that there were 2 clips that were married together. They were put in the same editing line. The easiest way to explain this as far as Why do we see the aspect ratio? When you're editing, whether it's in Premiere or Final Cut, when you open up your editing canvas, the project will ask you, what are your settings? And you put in the aspect ratio that you're using, or you can just drop the file that you have into the editing line and it'll choose those settings. But now your whole canvas is to those settings. So they put the first clip in and it went with that aspect ratio. And that's why it's, the way it looks. And then they put the second one in and it has a different aspect ratio. So we see that because whoever edited this together was so fucking sloppy that they didn't fix the aspect ratio on the second clip. They just married them together, hoping that we would, I guess, go for the idea that this is some kind of 1 minute and 2 second reset. Which again, I want to stress this. Pam Bondi said, oh, this happens every night, and I'm sure we'll get that footage to show people. They won't, because that's not what happened. So I just wanted to point this out. Now, why did I say that I think at 10:40 that was not Jeffrey Epstein, but that was in fact an actual inmate being led up those stairs? Now remember, that inmate goes up those stairs, and at first you see the corrections officer leave and let him in, and then basically they go up the stairs, then you see the corrections officer go back to their seat. And between 10:40 and 11:58, we never see that inmate come back out. So if they went up the stairs, as the initial report said, with a bunch of linens, right? That was the initial report. Now they later changed it and said, no, that was Jeffrey Epstein going back to bed because he was allowed to make some phone call to Belarus. Well, we never see anybody leaving, from those stairs at 8 o'clock early or anything like that. We just see a person that we were initially told was an inmate that had a bunch of linen and clothes to give to other inmates. This is the reason why I think they initially told the truth about what happened. If you look at the photos right here, this is of Jeffrey Epstein's cell. Notice anything weird? Sure is a lot of linens in there for a guy on suicide watch. So was the person that went up the stairs a person that got to him? Kind of looks that way. But obviously there's no way I can definitively say that. I have no idea what actually went down, in his cell, because there's no footage of his cell. But what I can tell you is that there's not 1 minute and 2 seconds missing. There's not 1 minute missing. There's as much time as they needed. Because at 11:58, they powered that DVR down. And when they turned it back on, it's recording at a different aspect ratio because those are default settings. And it starts recording at 12 midnight. Now from there, I'm just like all of you guys, you have to kind of look at it for what it is. Why is this being hidden? Why was this being fumbled? That's for, I guess, everybody to have that conversation online. But again, this is one of those conspiracy theories that came into my lane when it comes to working with software and cameras and all that stuff. And everything about this footage is suspect as hell. And let me know what you guys think about all of this. Pretty crazy stuff. But I will be back tomorrow because I do want to talk about what is going on in Los Angeles right now. There's a lot of things that people aren't reporting that, once again, are in the conspiracy lane, and they are pretty unnerving. With that being said, much love, everybody. I hope you guys are doing awesome, and I will be back tomorrow with more. All the best.